Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Louie Bishoff. One day, Louie woke up and realized that alcohol was ruling her life, that she was neglecting her kids, and that the after-marriage relationship that she was in was very codependent and unhealthy. Today, Louie is an entrepreneur, a great mother to her young adult sons, and by applying what she created with her copyrighted content in the Sober Relationship Blueprint, which is also trademarked, she has much deeper relationships with the people in her life. Since 2011, when her marriage ended, Louie has actively been learning how to sober date and how to have healthy, mature, sober relationships with all people. Louie, using the Sober Relationship Blueprint, has helped dozens of people build sober dating plans and find success in their romantic relationships. Louie resides in Phoenix, Arizona, and has been sober from alcohol since July 11th, 2012. So I'd like to welcome Louie here to our show. Welcome, Louie.
Hi. Oh, great to be here. It's such a wonderful pleasure and opportunity to be able to be here and be a guest. Thank you for that introduction. It's just a pleasure to have the opportunity to communicate with you and to share and to chit chat and share with other people too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Louie, I love what you bring to the table in your work because alcoholism is a real big deal in our world today. And the understanding that you took your most vulnerable part of your life and made it your strength is a huge step forward. Talk to us a little bit about life pre-alcohol or with alcohol and even pre-alcohol, because there are things that lead up to what we do and why we do it. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about that?
No, not at all. And along those lines, I've talked about this a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity to share in this area in this forum. As you mentioned in the beginning in my intro, in I got sober, or my sobriety date is July 11th, 2012. And in the United States, it's an easy date to remember because it's 7-Eleven. And in the United States, there's convenience stores that are 7-Eleven. And that's oftentimes would be one of the places where I would stop, along with lots of other places, to buy
Mm,
alcohol. So I do, for me, what's worked, and it's just only for me, is that I do go to 12-step programs. I do go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I do work with other people in recovery, and that's just what's worked for me. And the reason why I'm saying that is that because it's 7-Eleven in my home group for my 12-step meeting and for AA, they always remember, because I'm going into a room full of other alcoholics who have purchased their alcohol at convenience stores. They're like, oh, it's Louie's anniversary coming up at 7-Eleven. And sometimes they even like bring me a Slurpee and stuff like that, a little icy drink. So it's just kind of funny. So I appreciate the opportunity and the experience, the opportunity to be able to share my experience of, like you said, like what did my life look like before, and what was my journey, and kind of what does it look like now. And for me, and again, this is just my story. I don't have the huge consequences. I don't have any outside consequences, so to speak, of my addiction, of my active addiction and active alcoholism and active behavior, of doing things that now, as a sober female, and that I don't engage in. But I didn't lose jobs. I didn't have relationships break up. I wasn't in jail. I didn't have DUIs. That's not a judgment statement at all. That's just simply my experience. That's all that is. And for me, when I was just drinking regularly, I was just a regular social drinker. For me, I had more actions that were uh, taking up more space in my life, and in simple terms, codependent actions, people pleasing. um I was the one in my marriage that supported us. My husband stayed home and took care of the kids, so I was just busy all the time doing the normal busy things in life. And drinking regularly, meaning socially, because I was working. I had a job that I traveled a lot and would be going to trade shows and different things like that. So going out with clients, dinner, and I never got drunk in front of clients, or I mean, none of those kinds of things. However, that doesn't mean one way or the other. It's just that, like, for me, all of the codependency, all of that activity, now I know the words, all of that direction of entitlement. I've learned again for myself, Enolia, that the life that I lived, and I know these words now, I was really in my masculine energy because I was the one who was supporting us. I was the one who was living the male role model. Um, I was the one that was traveling. I was the one that was going out to trade shows. And it's not here or there, it's just the information. My husband was the one who stayed home. My husband kept the house clean. My husband took care of the kids. My husband was a great cook. He was always in his feminine energy, and just the difference of stereotypical gender roles. That's all that it was. And as I said, now I know those words of entitlement and not, I say that I didn't have any consequences. That's not untrue. However, that's not exactly all true. And what I mean by that is that the consequences I had were because I didn't know how. I do now, but I didn't know how to build emotional intimacy in my marriage. I didn't know how to be able to be fully in my marriage and be a committed partner in building that direction together. Neither one of us knew how. It's not his fault, my fault. It's just where we were and who we were at that point in our life.
I'm going to pause you there too, in the respect that, you talked about going to trade shows and being in your masculine and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to talk about that because I worked corporate for 20 years. Okay. Everything's good. I traveled a lot also. Okay. I did the shows, I'm there with the execs and everything else. The escapism and the bullying of, where's the drink in your hand? How come you don't have a drink in your hand? Oh, come on, get her a drink. She doesn't have one in her hand. Now let's talk, constantly, constantly for me, to the point where my escapism from the bullying was that I would put water, ice, and lemon in my drink and go, oh, I have a drink already, because it looked like alcohol. And that's how I would escape it. But the bullying was off the charts. It was like you couldn't engage in the conversation. You couldn't sit down and have someone and be that person that just like, no, I don't choose the drink, you know? And so I look at that in my own career. And by the way, I had an alcoholic father, right? A very functioning alcoholic father, right? Only once in the blue moon did he come home and it was completely dysfunctional. Otherwise, it was functional. And, so my mom actually prepped me to say, okay, you're going to be out in the corporate world. You're going to be doing this, that, and the other. Here are a couple of little tricks of the trade. Put some water in your glass, put a little lemon in there, or put a lime in there. Nobody's going to know the difference. Just like, oh, yeah, I'm happy, I'm great, and blah, 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 blah. But what I also realized is that I was around so many people that were unhappy because they were putting in 80 hours a week. They didn't know how to rest. and come to peace with themselves. And I was in the midst of all of that too. And I didn't know how to rest, and I didn't know how to come to peace with myself. But for me, it wasn't, like I'll let my hair down and drink, but the pressure was on. The pressure is harsh. And so, is any of this relatable at all for your situation?
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is not exactly. Now,
Okay.
let me go ahead and address the yes, because really what you're communicating about, and that's what I hear is, right, it culturally as adults, and I'll just speak as adults, culturally as adults, that alcohol is a really big part of work, of being an adult, of XYZ fill in the blank thing. And yes, I do agree with you. And that's been my experience also, is that there are a lot of people who are unhappy in life. Um, so that's the yes part. The no part is that all of the time that I was working, all of that time and communicating it, and when I was supporting my family, that's not when I was still drinking, but I wasn't drinking alcoholically. I was drinking as part of the culture, part of, like you're talking about, part of the role. Now, since I've stopped drinking, and where my life is that I've intentionally over these last since 2012, I've intentionally over and over and over again made changes in my life, not because of peer pressure or the culture, but because for me, I needed to learn how to be emotionally intimate with people. I needed to learn how to slow down. I needed to learn how to be a mother. These are the changes for me that I intentionally took. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I'll come back to just what you were saying and what you asked earlier. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I was saying that, and thank you for sharing, Enolia, about your mother and your father and the household that you grew up in. I did not grow up in alcoholic or drug addict family. I did grow up in a domestic violence household that my mom got beat up. I was the oldest. I got beat up. My brothers got beat. I have two younger brothers. We all got beat up all the time. It's just information. I've done a lot of work. I've worked through a lot of trauma, worked with therapists. I mean, a lot of
No,
things like that.
understood.
And the aspect around that is, for us, and for me, I should say, for me, is that there was not continuity of behavior. I did not, no one knew. I did not know that when the XYZ trigger would happen to get hit. Oh, you're wearing a white t-shirt. I don't like white t-shirts. Okay, I'm not going to wear a white t-shirt. Tomorrow I'll wear a blue t-shirt. Why are you wearing a blue t-shirt? So there was no pattern, right? And as a kid, there's no safety, there's no comfort, there's no predictability, there's no aspects about around boundaries. And for us, and I say for myself, I should say, we were punished for having any emotions. And I don't mean it's just like, why are you crying? I'll give you something to cry about, a sad feeling, but also that feeling of pride or happiness. Like, oh, I got a gold star. I came home with a gold star from spelling test in first grade. Well, who do you think you are? You think you're somebody special? You have a gold star? No, you're not. So the reason why I'm saying that is that having any emotions, positive or negative, were punished, and I didn't know how to have emotions or feelings.
Mm,
So that in my marriage or in those situations where I was working, I wasn't present to feel. I didn't know how.
mhm.
And so even going back to what you're saying, can I relate? Yeah, 100%. Because in the family also where I grew up, my parents were self-employed. And so the value in my family was work was number one, work was number two, work was number three, work, right? All the way down to number 99. And then, oh, by the way, maybe number 100 was family. Well,
Right.
I know as a child what that felt like, that family was not a value. And for
Mhm.
me, I wanted to change that direction, change that narrative, drop that generational aspect narrative of that works number one. So as I got sober, as I stayed in my sobriety, as I learned about myself, I made the changes in my life so that I would work from home, so that I would be self-employed, so that I would be present in my sons' lives, so that by the time that where they are now in 2023, they're 18 and 21 years old. The relationship I have with my two sons, Enolia, is that I'm really close with them. They're
Mhm.
really proud of me. I'm really proud of them. They're great kids. And I mean, yeah, of course, that's what moms say, right? But my sons, they'll call me for relationship advice.
Right.
When we see each other, they're like, I'm so glad to spend time with you. They pick up my calls when I call. They send me text messages. It's not about yay me. That's not it. It's that for me, I've learned to do differently, but I didn't know how before. So when my marriage was coming to an end, I could see it that like it's over here down the train tracks a little bit, so to speak. That's when I didn't know how to deal with the pain because I didn't know how to
Right.
feel. I didn't know how to do it differently. That's when I started being an active addict, right? And addicted to alcohol. It doesn't matter what the addiction is. It's drugs, it's alcohol, it's gambling, it's sex. Like you were saying, it's an escape
It's an
because
escape.
I didn't know how to process feelings. So again, it's not about yay me. It's just like this is my, as you said, like what's your story, Louie? Right? This is my story, and I
Mhm.
recognize you introduced, or you were talking about your program and the aspect of the spirituality meets humanity. And where I am today, I'm able to say I can comfortably tell you that I know that I'm a spiritual person and that I'm a human person and that for me, being able to show up every day and be of service to other people, whatever that may look like. And for me, my feeling, I call it the golden retriever dog approach to life, is
Mhm.
if you think about a golden retriever, they go to the dog park and the golden
Yes.
retriever, they just run around and like, here's a friend I haven't met. Here's another friend I haven't met. Here's another. So like I have that thought process for my life. Like, look at all these friends I haven't met because I'm
Right.
interconnected to everyone. And that aspect of like, now I'm not drinking and being single and dating, because that's huge part of how do I date? How do I have relationship? How do I engage in a sexual situation without drinking, without being drunk, without being high, without being stoned, without being low? Wait, I have to show up and I've done the work. And I've made all the mistakes. Like I've done the research for you. And being able to come forward and build that into the template for the sober relationship blueprint is where I am, and being able to bring that value and what I've learned and how I've helped other people out into the space to be able to say, as you said, I can do it too. I've gone through it. I'm on the other side. Here's what I did. Maybe it can help you. So that's just kind of
Like
a little bit of direction and answer to your questions.
when I think about how our experiences shape who we are and how we bring forward to be able to be a help to others in telling their story, right? So for me, my whole thing was that I loved corporate, but I was aspiring to people I didn't even like. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I doing this? What purpose is this serving me? You know? And that withdraw back for me came when I visited my first Indigenous grandmother in northern Canada. And I spent like my vacation time with her 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks changed my life because she showed me another way to live.
Mhm.
She showed me another way to be. And I share this with you because through that development and everything, and the different parts parts of my life where I reached highs of like aha moments. I get it now. I ended up creating Empower Achieve Succeed, how to how self-mastery and that look internally really works for me. And so I know that I also developed a book called The Seven Principles of Self-Mastery. And on those seven principles were the key learning moments in my life that I learned that changed the course of my life. And that's how I made it relatable and shareable to everybody else. You know, I have my master class, I have coaching certification program, I have my books. So tell me, I'm asking you the inside of the silver blueprint, the precipice in life of what you hit that made you come to that reality of this is what it's got to look like. And then a little bit about what it is.
Wow. Thank you for sharing what you did about your own growth and your own aspect, to move into a different identity or perspective that you had for yourself. Your question is a really uh, complex question, kind of like, like, okay, Louie, you can talk about it on the surface, but like, what's underneath? Like, what's
That's
the
exactly.
spill the tea, Louie, spill the tea. Dang. um, so I'm going to answer that in two parts, and maybe two and a half parts. So
Okay.
what I heard, right, is for your own personal aspect of like, I thought I knew who I was, and until I went to visit my indigenous grandmother. And when I went to visit my indigenous grandmother, I learned that there's a new part of me. And maybe I'm oversimplifying, but that's what I heard. And the first part that I can tell you is that I I grew up in Arizona in the United States, and that's neither here nor there. It's just kind of it's gotten in the news more as I've gotten older or lately, maybe in the last 10 years. But usually in Arizona is kind of like it's not California, it's not really a place that people know. Not a
I've
lot of
lived there.
yeah,
I
not a
lived
lot of
in
diversity.
Scottsdale. Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of diversity, not a lot of cosmopolitan aspects.
Mhm.
I grew up really white. I was able to go to Catholic school for grade school. I went to an all girls Catholic high school for high school. I went to college also in Arizona, did the quote unquote stereotypical upper middle class white female experience. That's, again, this is just my story. It's not judgment one way or the other, it's just information.
Mhm.
One of my girlfriends from college, she had studied, she was studying at that time, this is in the late 80s, and she was studying Chinese and political science, and this is in the late 1980s. And the reason why
Mhm.
I say that is that at that time, after we both had graduated, she had said, "I'm going to go back to China and Taiwan. I'm going to spend the summer over there. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "What? Like, look at my life. There's like, no, like, that's weird. That's random. Like, why?" Okay, spoiler alert, I went. So the reason why I'm saying that is for me, and you guys, you can see that I'm just this white female and pretty stereotypical, as I said. And for that particular time, this is in the now it's by that time it was early 1990s. It was an
Mhm.
aspect of okay, Arizona's boring, it's hot. I'll do that for the summer. So I went to Taiwan, which is Chinese culture, a little
Mhm.
island off the coast of China. It's in the news these days quite a bit. And the reason why I say that is I thought, this is now 1992, I'm going to go there just for a couple months for something fun to do, something different. Well, that's not what happened. I went there and I stayed for 6 years. So I
Mhm.
went there and I learned the language. I learned Mandarin Chinese. I went there and I met my husband, who's now my ex-husband. I met my husband there. I didn't think that's what it was, right? I was just dating somebody who was a local person. Like, this is a good idea. Look, I get to see different things from the local perspective, not just this, a direction of a very small piece of the culture by being a foreigner who's white in a culture where it's Asian culture. And I started dating my husband. I met him there. So now at the age of 24, 25 years old, I'm in a country where people do not look like me. No one looks like me. I'm in a culture where I'm the minority. I'm in a culture where people don't speak the language I speak. I'm in a culture where that's not the religion that I have. I'm in a culture and I'm in a relationship, in a biracial relationship. I'm in a place that I've never been before, of course. And I thought, maybe similarly to you, Enolia, is I believed with a capital T truth, I knew who I was. And now I
Mm.
went to another place where all of the constructs of the world that I had grown up in a Western culture in the United States, none of it applied. None. Now I'm in an Eastern culture. Now I'm in a place where the values of the culture are different than the values of the culture that I grew up in. Now I'm dating someone who is a different color than I am, a different country, different religion, different, all those kinds of things. And I began to change. Oh, well, why would you stay for 6 years? Okay, that makes, because I could see it as you were talking about self mastery. I was changing. I was changing. I was changing. I was changing. I began to learn without all of those constructs that were put on me as just a person in the United States. Regardless of culture, it happens everywhere in the world because we are all born into a family. We're all born into a culture. We're all born into a society, whatever that may look like. And for me, I put myself into another place, as I call it, I put myself into the petri dish, my own scientific experiments of personal growth. So that's part one of to answer your question, is like, what are some of the aha changes? So the aha changes is I lived outside of my country. I didn't live in London. I didn't live in Western Europe. I lived in a country in Asia, and I traveled around Asia, and I worked in Asia, and I married someone who was different from me, and I lived in that family, and we lived in multi-generational, and we lived in a house, in a building that was 13 people living there, because they're all different family. It's the grandparents, it's the adult children, it's the little kids, right? And I saw what that looked like. And in the United States, in the pull yourself up by your bootstraps culture, like, that's not encouraged.
No.
Now I come back, and I mean, I come back to the United States now. It's the late 1990s, but to myself, even right now, I was saying that my children are 18 and 21. If I have the gift of my sons being able to live with me, or I'm able to live with them in the future, what a gift for me. That's my perspective. Not like, oh, I should do this by myself. They should do that. Because back, even what you were saying, Enolia, is that aspect of spirituality and humanity, is that's my feeling. We're all connected. I can't do it alone. Whatever it is, fill in the
Right.
blank. And so when I was saying, like, whom I was talking to yesterday, is the family I grew up in was like, work is number one. Well, I made those changes to, like, how do I become family as a value? Well, I've made the changes so that those children that I have, those young adult men, they know, if I ask them, or if they're walking down the street and you said, hey, what are the values that you grew up with? And they'll be like, oh, family is a high important I matter, I have worth. Because that wasn't me. That
Right.
wasn't me until recently. So that was the first thing, is living outside my culture, learning more about myself. And also the half part is, being in that marriage with my husband for almost 20 years and working through most biracial, statistically, biracial relationships don't last through 6 years. And so for us, we dated 3 years before we were married. We were together 10 years before we had children. I didn't have my children until I was 35 and 38. And so even though our marriage still ended in divorce, being together in a biracial, binational, bi fill in the blank, bicultural, all these different, being in that continuously, um, had allowed me to have a different perspective, not only being in a biracial relationship and being able to be in a relationship with an immigrant, to understanding what is that like, right? From the American perspective, and what is his experience as an Asian person in the United States, because that's not my experience as a white female, right? Being able to learn
Right.
far more empathy and sympathy. So that's the part, the 1.5. And then just the second part that I was going to say, another aha and another change that allowed me to set up sober relationship blueprint, is that I for me, and I can only speak for myself, I had no sense of worth. I had no sense of self. Like if you met me before I got sober, you wouldn't know these things on the outside, Enolia.
Yes, I do know.
Yeah,
Yes.
but on the inside, I had no worth. I had no feeling of self-confidence. Oh, what's your favorite color, Louie? I don't know. What's your favorite color? Oh, my favorite color is blue. Oh, well, my favorite color is blue too. I didn't know how to have a voice. I didn't know how to, and I still feel those things. Like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't know what I want for dinner. What should I say? Like, oh, I know that you like tacos, so I like tacos. But even though I don't really, whatever it is, I still can feel that pull on the inside from the
Mhm.
decades of behavior of that. And like you were saying, changing the unlearning and relearning. So with sober relationship blueprint, the other aha around that was that as I moved forward in my life and continued to date and put myself into the petri dish of my own social scientific experiments, people around me in recovery, they started to see that change also. And then they started to say, "Can you help me?" And then I started to apply, which I didn't know. I just started to apply the things that I was doing and started mentoring and started coaching and started developing that and what that looks like. So with the sober relationship blueprint, and I'll just finish with this and thank you for
No, no,
listening,
no, you're fine. You're fine.
is that I built the template, the construct of the sober relationship blueprint because I have a marketing background. I knew that you kind of need these kinds of things. The sober relationship blueprint is that the word sober, SOBER, each one of those 5 letters is an area for learning. So
Right.
that the S is what's most important that I've learned. And that's where I come forward. The S is for self esteem and being able to start to learn who you are. What is your worth? Who are you? I don't know. What is your character? Well, how do you get, what's the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem? Like, I don't know, right? But that's where I start, is on the S, on self-esteem. And then the O is for openness and being more open to new things. Like, I always date this kind of person. That's my type. Well, what if that's not your type? What if that's just your comfort zone from family of origin? A lot of times, and I'll just say this as kind of a side note, it was true for me. It was true for me. But a lot of times I hear this also with the people that I work with. Oh, it's just kind of boring. Oh, it's not that exciting. Oh, it's not that in, like, I get that because I am an addict, and I love that distraction of being present. I love the disappearing into that feeling of highness. Like, oh my God, I love being high. The adrenaline rush, right? The dopamine hit. I get that. And so then now, and I tell people like, That's the openness. It's okay that you're not getting high. You're not getting that dopamine rush. You're not feeling that spark. It's okay because that's simply what you're used to. Be open to something different for yourself, for your
Right.
own self mastery. And then the B is learning boundaries. The boundaries, I didn't have self worth, Enolia. I didn't have a feeling of presence of who I was. I didn't have value for myself. I didn't matter. So if someone was paying attention to me in a sexual manner because I didn't have the boundaries, because I come home with that gold star on my paper in first grade. Well, who do you think you are? You think you're someone special? No, I guess I don't. Oh, you're paying attention to me in a sexual manner. I must have some value.
Gold
Okay.
star. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I must have some worth. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. But if you say that I have that worth and value, okay. So now I
Yeah.
have to learn how to have boundaries. Like, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. No, you can't kiss me. No, you're not my type. No, it's not okay to say those things and behave that way with me.
Right.
Learning, not learning how to have a voice, but learning a boundary, how to say a boundary, how to keep a boundary, and how to respect a boundary from other people.
Respect it and also standing in that boundary with unwavering.
Yeah,
Mm,
because my
yeah.
my past is like, oh, you know what? I can't go out tonight because I'm not feeling well. Oh, come on, let's just go out. Okay, I'll go out. Right? Like I want to please you, right? The codependence, the people pleasing. So
Yeah.
that aspect, and then the E is for evolving into other intimacies, learning about emotional intimacy, intellectual, spiritual intimacy, not having the concept that it's just sexual intimacy and that's the only but I didn't know because I didn't know how. And then the
Mhm.
R for sober relationship blueprint, which you can find on sober relationship blueprint, all one word.com, is readiness and being ready for whatever that looks like to you. And the
Yeah.
last sentence that I'll say is that as I've changed, all of my relationships have changed. Not just my romantic relationships, but I have deeper, more authentic relationships with my friends, with my family, with the people I interact with through work, with romantic relations. I have all deeper, more authentic relationships because I'm a deeper, more authentic person because I know myself. That self mastery, as you were saying. So the question that you asked is like, hey, how did you get to this point about sober relationship? Right? Is that whole growth of being outside of my culture was huge. Being in a relationship for almost 2 decades with someone from another country, another color, all those kinds of things. There's a lot of growth in there to learn a lot of sympathy and empathy. And that aspect of moving through and working with other people and recognizing that I can put this together in a template. I can put a framework around this and I can help other people because I've done it and I've helped other people already and being able to come forward in the marketplace like that. So I hope that helps.
That's phenomenal. Thank you for taking the time to answer that with all of your heart. And I really, truly appreciate it. And why this is important is because we talk about these subjects, and a lot of people talk about them on the surface. And they're not relatable always until you hear the story behind the story, you know? And there's so many things that people are gonna like, oh my God, that's me. Oh, that part is me too. And that part is me. And that part is me. And that's when you capture the attention of just like, okay, wow, I get it. Because many of us, including myself, biracial relationship, my ex-husband's Italian, so I understand what you're talking about in terms of another culture, the sense of family, having the family close and very, very close knit because they're immigrants. So those pieces are important. They shape the framework of who you are. They shape the framework of how you relate and learn relationships,
Yeah.
because in the Western culture we don't respect eldership. We don't we push our kids out as quickly as possible. Okay. And the experience of another culture, here as I sit in Angola and you hear the passersby and they're speaking Portuguese, they're not speaking English. So that submersion that you talked about for me it's just my heart because here I am still experiencing that, still going through that. And I don't know Portuguese as well as I should. And those are real contributors and factors in shaping our lives, giving us the strength and actually having us see the strength of what it takes to stand up and to be in a different culture and to do these different things. And some of us handle it extremely well and some of us don't, and it's not relatable. So these things are important. And it's also interesting, my sons, I sit there, I have two boys also. See, all these commonalities, right? Two boys. I went to private school. I went to Lutheran school from kindergarten to eighth grade, and my boys are 27 and 29 right now. Okay, so all these relatable things and understanding that the best thing I could do for them in understanding how the experience of different cultures mattered to me in really shaping my life, and I really loved it. It really, really helped me embrace the differences and the love of differences of people, and differences of culture. And they started traveling at fifth and sixth grade. They traveled with a program called People to People Student Ambassadorship. And they got to go to places like China and Italy and France and Fiji and New Zealand and Australia. And like my oldest, my youngest is now living in Australia. And that was one of the places that he had visited that he absolutely loved. So when he was younger. So it's funny how all of these factors play a role, but they're real, they're very tangible for us. And people need to understand that change can be embraced, or if change is too much and it's not embraced, it's like, okay, well, you can still be present. It's okay. And that you can embrace it and like it or not like it, but you don't have to escape from it. You just change your situation. Now, you kind of glossed over that Arizona was hot, so I think I'd do this for the summer. Let me tell you something. I lasted in Arizona 2 months, all right? 2 months. It was actually 3 months. It was from April until June when it got so oppressively hot that I was like, I can't do it. And when you're a transplant and you're coming in there later in life and you experience that heat, it was nothing like I had experienced before. So my hat's off to you. It wasn't just hot and I'll do something else. It's hot in Arizona. It is extremely hot. So I can really, really appreciate how just wanting to make a change for that summer is meaningful, is meaningful. But oh my gosh, I'm so excited about how much you shared. I'm so excited about the program and that there are so many people that your program will benefit. So understanding that your program is going to benefit so many people, what did you self-discover in your sober relationship with yourself that you love to do that you never knew before?
Oh gosh, Enolia, you ask difficult questions. What did I discover in my own sobriety journey, in my own sober relationship that I didn't know before? It, it may sound cliche, and I'm not trying to sound cliche, but the truth is what did I discover? Is that I could discover truly how to have authentic relationships with all people. And the reason why I say that is that just again, for myself, I've been in 12-step recovery. For me, once I became a sponsor, started to mentor other women, and started to truly learn that idea of unconditional love, that where I want to be like, oh, F them, I don't want to help them. And my sponsor would say, like, shut up, Louie. It's not about you. Go back and talk to them. It's not about you. Get over yourself. Go back and talk to them. Oh, I don't care. Go back, go back. And
Mhm.
for them to be like, I don't want to work with Louie. I don't want to change, like you were talking about. I don't want to do those things. Who does she think she is? Blah, blah, blah. However, I continued to show up and they've continued to show up. And we've both grown. And when I say both, I mean myself and the other people that I've learned how to have relationships with by being fully present and emotionally present and not hiding and not disappearing and not figuring out like, forget this is too hard. That's what I would say is what I've discovered about myself is that connection to all of humanity everywhere in the world, and that's just me, and historically and in the future. Because for me, what I've discovered is that I'm not unique in my feelings. So if I'm not unique in my feelings, if I go to a party and I feel uncomfortable and I feel awkward, must be other people who feel uncomfortable and awkward.
Right.
So now I identify, right? I identify within, not without. Now I'm a part of something. I'm not apart from.
Mhm.
And so if I have those feelings, then other women must have had these feelings 100 years ago, 200 years, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, because they're just feelings of humanity. I feel inadequate. I don't feel like I belong. I feel scared. I feel happy. I feel elated. So for me, that's what I would say. That's the biggest thing that I've learned is just that interconnection and that aspect of being able to build authentic, genuine connections with people.
That's beautiful. And, to be able to look in the mirror and love the totality of self is huge. It really is. And that's the great parts about ourselves, the parts that we don't like so much, it's really, really huge. And that we can walk away navigating through life whole is the best thing that anyone could ever.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll say this one sentence is I love the life I have, Enolia. I love the person that I am. I'm 100% person. I'm 100% everything of who I am. Already 100%. So when I talk about relationships or romantic relationships, for me, and the way that I move forward with the people that I work with, is that until you are 100%, you cannot bring someone else into your life. And I mean, people do all the time. I did all the time. But I can't bring someone into my life and have a healthy, mature, sober, loving relationship that I want and have now I'm 100%, but now I'm in a relationship. Now I'm at 110%.
Mm,
So if I'm moving into life of like, I'm 50% and I'm looking for the other person to complete me and to fulfill me, I'm not there. I'm not enough yet.
right,
So the
right.
relationship I'm in right now, it's a new relationship. We've been dating a few months, but the person I'm dating, my life is 100%. And now in that relationship, I'm at 110%.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to leave it on a positive note like that. Louie, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. How can people get in contact with you? Say that .com again.
Yeah, I know. But it's all one word, sober relationship blueprint.com. I've got free download, 5 tips for having a healthy, sober love relationship. It's a free PDF. It's really great. Sober relationship blueprint.com. And I also have on Amazon a workbook of 14 days of self love. You can Google it, look up Louie Bishoff, be able to buy it on Amazon. It's just a really great start to being able, as you were saying, that self love, that self mastery direction, and becoming a full person of who I am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your wise words and thank you for sharing so much of a part of your heart. This has been Louie Bischoff, and we are so grateful to have had you here. Thank you, Louie.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me and asking me. It's wonderful to be able to be part of this and to share my story with other people as well.
So you've heard it here on The Infinite Way. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.